What's up, Liron here, and in this video we're gonna paint this scene based on a reference photo, a picture I took at this place. Okay, it's just a street here in Tel Aviv and it's against the light. I actually already did a mini painting of this scene, as you can see here, and we're gonna do another one, a little more detailed but still quite simple. And my emphasis here all throughout the video is gonna be how to first visualize it so that it makes it easier to paint it, okay? And we're gonna focus on the large shapes of shadows. We're painting against the light, which turns everything into very contrasty and punchy the way I like it. And again, we're gonna see how much easier it is to paint it after you visualized and have seen it in your mind's eye. So with that being said, let's get started with the process. So before we get started, let's take just a moment to examine the reference photo. This will pay dividends later on when we actually know what we're doing. So the horizon line is somewhere around the center, and I'm completely fine with that because I actually do want to show the height of the building and also the ground below. The main shapes is we have one big building on the left with some trees, then we have a bunch of trees and buildings on the right, then we have the road, the cast shadow, person, and some cars. That's all there is to it. So now I'm going to place the horizon line. Now I will place it a little under the center, okay, because I feel like I need a little more place above. So that's the horizon line. Now, the vanishing point, we're gonna place that not in the middle, but a little towards the left, even though it's closer to the middle in the original one. Now, let me show you how quickly I get rid of this block of trees. So it's just a bunch of trees, and then you can add a couple of straight lines just to break that off and have it feel like buildings. And maybe add this antenna that you can see there. And later on we'll add some more details to make it look more building-like, but that's generally it. Right side is done. Left side, we have a couple of trees and then the building itself. And that building I do want to get properly, so kind of like that. A bit at an angle towards the vanishing point. Okay, not perfect, but that's close enough. We don't need this section. Now, interestingly enough, there are a couple of highlights on that building, which I will save later. I'll get them in using the brush. I don't need much more than that. So that's a building. I do want to round it up. Maybe let's do it like that. Okay, so that's that. Bit of a tree here. Now we have the sidewalk coming through here and then making a turn to the left. We have the person at the horizon line's height, so that's his head, and he's gonna cross the street like so. We have the zebra stripes here, like this. Person, legs here, middle point is here. Upper body, just a blob. Lower body, just a couple of lines. Head is a little too small, that's fine. He's casting a shadow, but also it's important to remember that these buildings here cast a shadow, so shadow casting here. This is gonna be the actual stripes, just so that I know. And notice how loose I am here. This is the other end of the road. And then we have a couple of cars, and we'll wrap it up with that. So here's car number 1, and it's important that the top part's gonna be somewhere around here. So that's a top of a car, that's another top of a car, that's another top of a car, and then the actual front of the car, like so, casting a shadow to the right, like this, and barely any details are necessary. As you can see here, I barely got anything in. And hopefully the way it'll read abstractly is gonna work itself out. Okay, you don't always know that, but you can hope. Now I'm gonna place a couple of people here as well. It's kind of, I don't know, walking besides the cars dangerously. You actually see that kind of thing a lot here. So here we go, done with the drawing. Let's get to painting this. So we'll get started, and for this one I think I'm gonna keep it very simple. I'm gonna just spray some water here. What I think I'll do is a nice transition from blue at the top to burnt sienna at the bottom. So I'm gonna add more burnt sienna the more we get to the bottom of this. It's a funny way of saying it. The more we get to the bottom of this. So here we have a bunch of French ultramarine, and we do have that sunlight that maybe I'll just kind of paint around. That's always fun. And then as we get closer to the center, I'm just gonna add a bit of burnt sienna. Okay, start warming it up a bit more. Add to the mix, like so. And then I'm gonna use my other brush to move the paint around and kind of blend this edge. And it's not going to be fully blended. I'm going to need to probably come back to it in just a moment. But here, as you can see, I can start warming it up, maybe even using a bit of yellow just to assist us, okay? Now what I want to do is with this one, because it's going to be such a simple painting, I'm going to leave the highlights already at this stage. You know, I don't always do this, but this time I want to have white highlights, okay? Completely white highlights. So I'm going to do. These people don't matter right now. This car does matter, so I'm going to keep a highlight there on its top. This person, I will leave a highlight, and don't forget we can always add them back using a white pen or something like that. So we have a bunch of highlights. Now, oops, dropped my brush. I want to take just another moment to blend the edge here once again. Sometimes you have to do this a couple of times. That's fine. Dry the brush. Here we go. And this is well blended enough, and hopefully that'll convey the strong sunlight we're after. The road is not as light as you would think. That's something to take into consideration. And then we start getting to the part with the sidewalk, shadow cast here, the zebra stripes, and then I'm just gonna start building them up like so. And hopefully that works out nicely. I'm gonna redden it just a bit around the bottom. I want to feel free to use whatever colors I want. So a bit more red towards the bottom. And it shouldn't make too much sense right now, so don't worry about it too much. The painting is still at its infancy, but it will make sense later on. So now we're gonna let this dry and come back and continue. One last thing I want to do here is just to connect this shape. Here we go. I'm gonna let this dry, come back for another wash. Everything's dry now, and on to the next step. So what you'll notice is that this building here is not as dark as you would think, and I want to convey that. Now, top part is closer to the sun, so I'm gonna start warm, and I'm gonna use paint that's, again, not too dark, okay? You want to preserve some kind of mid values here, just a little bit of them. Now this is a little too light off the bat, I can tell you that. I'm gonna fix it in just a moment, so this goes rounded like that. Now remember, I told you I'm gonna preserve some highlights on the building because they're there, so here we go. This is a little more like it. So like that, and then we have a couple of those windows kind of reflecting, or the balcony, or whatever that may be, reflecting the sunlight. So we leave a couple of these highlights here, and perhaps add a couple of details now while it's still wet, that may help it look like a building, maybe not, you know, depending on how good I'm gonna be here. But the main point is, again, it's not the details that add the grace and everything, it's the major large shapes. That's what matters here, nothing else really. So now I'm gonna start to cool it off the more we move downwards. We have less sunlight, and I'm gonna darken it as well, okay? And then here, somewhere at this point, it's connecting to the trees. So I will get that kind of tree texture as well. And again, I'm using very light-hearted brush strokes. Now the advantage of working this small a size is that you still have a lot of control. Notice how much time I can spend here and not worry, because everything is small. I don't need to cover up a huge surface in one go, so I actually have some time to deal with it. Now I'm dealing with the left section first and then the right, okay? So I don't have to split my attention too much. So here we have that person. I'm gonna fix the shape of his body later on with just a bit of a white gel pen that I've been really enjoying using lately, as you may have seen. And then this is the bottom part of the building. Now here, it's gonna cast a shadow. That shadow, I'm gonna make it a little cooler probably. Now the funny part is gonna be, I wanna leave some of that zebra stripes visible. So I may, let's try darkening where they are not and see what happens. Probably won't be a good idea. You know what, let's cover everything up right now. It's not that dark, we can cover everything up. This is the line of the shadow, maybe a bit of this. Now because this scene is very unified in its colors, I want to break that off, break that routine, shall we say, and I'm gonna make this person's shirt a little blue, a little red, sorry. So this is gonna be like a rogue color that's gonna be in this painting, just to give it some light. Now I'm gonna add a bit of yellow, so that'll push it to a bit more orange, and that's where I'm gonna place the head. And for the pants or whatever it is, I'm gonna take a bit of what I already have here on the palette, and I'm gonna use, let's dry the brush a bit, just a bit of a dry brush strokes. He's mid-step, so that's what you get. And he is casting a shadow on the ground like so, like this. Here we go. A very elongated shadow because of the time of day and the hour. Now another important part here is the sidewalk, so I'm going to add that kind of shadow underneath it, because remember, light comes from there, and then there is a dark section around here as well. That's going to help with the light. I'm going to add a couple of shadows here at the distance. Now the right side, and this is where our cars are really going to pop. Here I'm going to neutralize it all a bit more, so a bit of blue, a bit of red, a bit of yellow, and perhaps some burnt sienna. Maybe let's try and push it to be a little bit towards the green, but still very dark and barely discernible. And this part's going to be a little darker. Foliage tends to be a little darker. Now, what is important is that I paint around those highlights that I previously set up, and preserve the edges here of the building so that it actually looks like a building as I planned it to. The downside of doing small paintings is the little bit of lack of control. You see, because everything is so small, you have to be a little more careful. But the upside is, again, it's overall, I think, all in all, it's simpler. So I do recommend that. I'm gonna just add in some pure yellow here. Lost a bit of the highlight, but that's fine. I'm gonna leave a bit of a highlight around these people here. And we'll see how that works in just a moment. And now remember, we also have a couple of cars here near the bottom that I also want to leave some highlights for. Very gentle, not too much. A little bit of a random highlight here and there. And then a couple of them here. The people, I'm still considering what I'll do with them. I may just cover them all up and maybe blue them a little. Maybe even get a bit of that phthalo blue. Just two people and the shadows underneath, and then the shadows cast by the people that are going to be kind of in that direction, like this, and hopefully that makes sense. Now for the cars. Now this is easier than you'd think, really, because all we have to do is add that dark shadow here under the top roof of the car, and that's going to lead to our desired effect. Okay, so a bit of that here. And then we have the mirror, a couple of details, but then this front part is really gonna make it happen for us. And then I'm gonna add the cast shadow by the car, and hopefully it will read like a car. And again, you see, you don't need much to have it read like a car. So that's one, another one here, and then another one for the front. Maybe leave a bit of a highlights for the headlights of the car side, and then we can add just a bit of thing here and maybe here just as the bottom part of the car at the back. A couple of details here, and believe it or not, this is pretty much done. I'm just gonna add a couple of details here just for fun, as I always do. So first off, we have this, I don't know, antenna, whatever that is. I'm really bad at these things, so sorry if I kind of mess it up, but that's that. Maybe just a couple of details on the rooftop to, I don't know, show that this is people made it and it's not just nature. I think I'll add a couple of wires because that always helps with the, and let's do one of these things, kind of like that, like light pole or something that'll help add a bit of, let's actually turn this into that kind of thing. You know what? Do this. It helps with connecting the top and bottom parts. and then I'm gonna do this kind of thing. Adds a bit more movement, breaks the monotony of the big chunks of you know, of buildings. And then we can do something like that as well. Connect it here. So you get a bit of interest running around here like this. And I think pretty much we're done. I will like to darken this guy's shirt a little more. Now I may lighten it accidentally. Yeah, because this is a very bright red, but that's fine. So let's go with that. For his head, I do want to darken it because there's hair there, so it should be darker. And that'll help completely the impression of this person. Something that I've been enjoying doing is just grabbing a bunch of pure red paint and adding some arms. I don't know why, it's just fun from time to time. It's a nice little look. Maybe I'll add the shadows of the heads here. And then you can grab a white gel pen and you can start fixing up shapes of stuff. So a bit of the shoulder here. You don't have to, and there's no need to overdo it, but it can help a bit. Another cool thing you can do with it is where these kind of lines touch areas that are dark, you can add a bit of a highlight there, but I think we're gonna wait a bit for the paint to dry and then do a bit of that. So let's, you know what, actually it works. So here we go, bit of that, bit of this here. Let's do something like that here, just for fun. Sometimes I'll definitely improvise and see what happens just for the hell of it. But in any case, I'm gonna let this dry now and come back and just see if there's anything else I want to talk about. Probably nothing, but let's do that. So as I mentioned, I always love to leave the painting for a while just to let it sit and figure out what else it needs. Okay, that's the main part of painting, what the painting needs, not what you missed in the reference, not what you forgot, not any specific detail, but what the painting needs. And what I feel like it needs is just a little bit of a darker spot here and there. So these people I do wanna, and let me zoom in a bit. So these people I do wanna darken just a bit to separate them from their environment. I don't know how big of a difference that'll make, but we're gonna do it anyway. So that's that. I do think the shadows under the cars could be a little darker. That'll add a bit more of a punch to them, so like this. Sometimes I like to add these small details like antennas or whatever it is. And this guy, because he's so close to us, I do want to darken just a little bit of him. And then what we're gonna do, I was tempted to darken this building behind, but I think I'll leave it like that to maybe, you know what, let's try. Let's give it a try. Just the bottom part of the building. I feel like it needed some darkening. I didn't want to overwork it or, you know, do too much, but I think with that kind of thing will be fine. This will be all right. So let's do this. And it goes around kind of like that. So that's that. And then we can even, I guess, darken everything that's around here as well. So like that, I think that this looks good. Now a couple of highlights that I do want to add. So a bit of a wire running through here. And then these poles, I can add just a bit of a line like that. Now if the line turned out too prominent like me, let me show you what I do. I just grab a bit of a tissue and kind of wipe it. And there we go. That's me, I messed it up. But that's fine. So kind of like this is what I was going for. That's fine, it's gonna read well. I can do this correction just to salvage it, and that is to add one more line here, and then it'll make sense, okay? Because now I just added essentially another line. I did want to add a bit of highlights to the left sides of these people, because the light comes from the middle here, and maybe a bit of a highlight to this person. And then I can add the stray highlight here and there, kind of like that. Mirrors, so that's sometimes something that has a bit of a highlight on it and a bit of a detail here and there. And I think with that, this one is done. I hope you enjoyed seeing the process, and mainly I want you to have in mind, again, the whole idea of visualize the shapes. You've seen us plan it out. We looked at where this shape should be, how dark it should be, and by visualizing it and by seeing it first in your mind's eye, what happens is you're able to then put it onto the paper. So I just signed it really small. You couldn't see because I was too zoomed in. Apologies about that. I hope you enjoyed this one, and now let's wrap it up. So this is it for this tiny painting process. I hope this makes things easier. I hope it was easy to follow, and also the idea of seeing it first in your mind's eye and lumping and creating the big chunks of shapes. You don't need much more than that to set up the feeling of location and to make you feel like you're actually there. It's the main large shapes, not the small, tiny, minute details. So I want to thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you still haven't, and let me know in a comment down below what you thought of this. I know I have tons of comments to get to, and I am getting to them, but just at a slow pace, okay? I have tons of things to do, but I make sure to carve out some time to reply back to comments, and I read everything. So thank you so much. I will see you again in another vid real soon.